Thank you for stopping by today and being interviewed.
Of course.
Do you mind telling us your name, where you're from, where you serve in the Army?
So my name is Aaron. I'm from Chicago, 23 years old. Served in Givati for 3 years.
My name is Simon Zolber. I came from North Carolina, from the United States of America, North Carolina. I serve in Givati, which is in charge of the Southern District.
My name is Moshe Zolber. I'm from America, from North Carolina. I am 17 years old, and I came here February 23rd, 2019, to serve in the Army, and my draft date is December 15th.
So, can you tell us why you decided to come to Israel and serve in this nation?
I strongly believe that Israel is the land of the Jews. No other country is very safe for Jews. Back in America, I faced a lot of anti-Semitism, specifically in Chicago, where there's a lot of minorities, just kind of ironic. And yeah, just wanted to be a part of the culture and the development of the country.
I came because I felt a calling to my heritage. I knew that I was Jewish. I knew that it was important, and I wanted to be a part of that.
Oh man, that's a good question. Well, a lot of my brothers have come here, and so I think some of it was just following in the footsteps of my family, but also I know a lot of it is because I love Israel and I love my heritage. It's I would consider myself Zionist, and I think there's growing anti-Semitism in places all over the world, and I think that it's a privilege to be able to be here in a land where it's safe for the Jews, or for the most part safe.
What is your opinion on the Haredis not serving in the Israeli Army?
I think they should serve. Being in the Army gives you a lot of skills. You leave it more responsible. You have more time management. And it just makes you more of a man.
They take a religious standpoint of not wanting to serve in the Army. How would you combat that using your own point of view or logic or something that...
Well, there are specific units that are specially made for Hasidic, Haredi people. I believe that those should be growing. I think there should be more of those in the Army. I don't believe that studying Torah or praying is a good defense for the country.
I think that it's a complicated issue in which both sides needs to understand the other, but ultimately because they're in Israel and we're offering the protections, we're offering, it's the combat units that are defending Israel. If they want to live in here, then they also have a responsibility to defend it and to participate in the Army, because it's an extremely important part. Without the Army, there wouldn't be anything. Israel wouldn't exist without its Army. So, in that aspect, I think, yes, they should.
I think that, well, just to put it very short, at first, that should change. I think they live here. They are a part of society. They play a very big part in the government, actually. They make a lot of the rules. And as being part of the society, I believe they should serve in the Army, because after all, the IDF is the only thing that allows Israel to continue as a nation. And I think that it's a problem. And if it would change in the future, that would be a good thing.
Still with continuation of being people serving in the Army, what do you think about the Arabs not being required by law to serve here? Do you think that should change or remain the same way?
I do think it should change. I don't think they will follow it, but I do think it should change. Same thing that they did with the Haredim. They gave them their own units, that sort of thing. They also have that for Bedouins. They should have, some sort of Arab unit, some sort of Arab integration into the Army.
How would you justify that, though?
how would I justify it? Well, they live here, right? If they like the country, I'm assuming they like it. That's why they're here, right? If they didn't like it, wouldn't they just go somewhere else?
I don't know. I don't know
And
if they have
if
that
they-
choice.
Okay, well, if let's say they do, if they like the country that they live in, wouldn't they want to defend their country?
Yes.
I'm interviewing you now.
With the Arabs, because I think two things. One, they're not Jewish, even though they're living in Israel. So that's, for example, in one of the bases that I was at, we had a few people, a few Arabs, complaining because when we sang the Hatikva, which is the national anthem of Israel, you would say, like, it's our hope, but they were complaining that it's not their hope. This is just the land that they're in. And so they don't have that, most of them at least don't have that calling or that desire to have Israel as a state, as a heritage, as a people, carry on and live on. And that's basically the biggest motivation for, that's a large motivation for a lot of people who join camp. That being said, I think that it would be better to give them the choice rather than make it mandatory.
I think that it's a problem. And I think the Arabs, I think if somebody lives here, like maybe if they're living here temporarily, it's okay. But if somebody lives here and they're born here, they should serve in the army. And the Arab population, it's a special case though, because you don't know where they stand. And although they live here and are part of society, a lot of them don't want to be here, and they don't like the society that they're a part of. And so putting them in positions in the military where they need to be for this nation, it's questionable to think that maybe they stand with other ideology that's not what the IDF stands for. And so you could go back and forth depending on, that individual. But as a people group, they are in a different mindset than most Israelis.
How do you feel about fighting with Israeli Arabs against other Arabs?
Oh. Ask it again.
How do you feel about the Israeli Arabs serving in the army and fighting against other Arabs?
I feel that once I'm part of a team with Arabs in it, I would no longer look at them as an Arab, but as a teammate, as a brother, as someone who gets my back. And the other side, the enemies, I wouldn't think of them as Arab either. I would think of them as somebody who's trying to assault me or kill me or cause harm to somebody, that I love, in my team or me or my country.
In regards to the education system, do you think that you would let your children study here? And do you have any experience or knowledge?
I personally don't have experience with the school system here. My brother, who is in America now, he learned here for 4 years. Sometimes his teacher wouldn't show up and he'd be sitting in class for an hour just messing around. Sometimes the teacher would just get up and leave. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of issues with the teachers here. Maybe the salary, maybe the curriculum, maybe the kids themselves. I don't know if I would send my kid to a school here. Maybe some sort of private school, maybe homeschool. I don't know if the public is the way to go.
What do you think about the, I would say, more or less segregation of the government-mandated schools here, with schools for Arabs, schools for religious Jews, and schools for secular Jews or secular Israelis?
I mean, if the people are sending their kids there and they're pouring money into the school, then I think the school should, stay that way. But, if there's failing schools that are doing that, maybe they should, open up some their options.
With regards to the Israeli education system, do you think that you would let your children study here in these schools?
Yes, I do. like there's not so much of a different choice. At the same, I think it would be hard. I grew up and I was homeschooled. I was homeschooled in America also when I was here, when I was younger. I still studied at home, and I found that to be extremely productive, extremely useful, because it allowed us to learn much, much more in a smaller period of time. And because of that, if I were to put my kids in public school, then I would still want them to do extra things, and I would still want to overview a lot of it, just because I think that the public school in and of itself isn't a perfect system, so I would want to do as much as I could to help them.
What do you think about the Israeli school system here, the education system? Do you think that you would let your children study here?
I think just like many educational systems around the world, it is broken and for sure flawed. Me personally, I would rather choose homeschool or a more private school where I could ensure my kids would get the best education that I would be able to offer them. Because I have a lot of friends here who are in school or who have just gotten out of school, and I think that a lot of them would have been better off homeschooled. Still some great people, but it's a hard environment, and yeah, that's about it.
With regard to the recent elections in Israel, what party did you vote for? And if you didn't vote, maybe tell us why.
So I did not vote. I'm not a big fan of politics. Most of the politics here, I don't even understand. I don't understand how the system works. There's a second election now because who knows? Like, I'm really ignorant in that point, so I just think that it would be useless and not worth it.
I voted for Zehut. I thought that it was it leaned toward personal freedom in our choices. We could choose who we could, within bounds, choose who we could pay our taxes to within certain organizations. It was for professional military. It was for the government's taking a step back and letting people choose their own directions, more or less, and I was very for that. I think that personal freedom is extremely important. So,
well, I've only been here for 3 months, meaning I'm not very educated in the political system here. I know what I stand for is freedom of the people to choose, and from what I've heard, that would have been Zehut. So I'm not exactly sure who I would have voted for, but I think it would have been Zehut because they gave the people more control rather than the government.
And the final question pertaining to marriage. What do you think about the government structure here, or more or less religious structure of marriage, where, for instance, an Arab cannot marry a Jewish Israeli here? Do you think it should change? Do you think it's...
I do think it should change. I don't think it will. I think one of our qualities about being Jews is we're stubborn. I don't really see the reason to control that. I do see like families have their choice and they can set someone up with a Jew with a Jew, that kind of stuff. But I don't think the government should have any control over that.
I think that, again, like one of the reasons why I voted for Zehut is because they wanted to change that so that you could marry the person who you choose, and I think that that's a very personal. It comes down to personal freedom. How much freedom is the government going to allow me to have in my personal decisions? And I think that, especially as, like, at one point we were slaves, all of Israel, we were slaves in Egypt. And I think having a land of our own to become free to choose to do, to make our own decisions. Now, if our government is telling us, no, you can't do this and you can't do this, I feel like it's kind of reversed. Like, it doesn't make sense. I think that we should have that personal freedom. All the more because we knew what it once was to be under those restrictions.
Well, as far as I know, the reason that is the way it is why it stands, especially enforced from the government, is because of bloodline. And they want to keep the bloodlines pure. But I think that there are a whole lot more impurities in the bloodline than the Israeli government or a lot of people even know. And at this point in society, it should very much be up to the individuals and the families in order to choose whom they marry.
Cool. Well, thank you for your time and thank you for stopping by.
Yeah, thanks for having me.